Hey guys, this is Tan-Man here doing love, and today with my good friend and co-host Ben,
Hey guys, what's going on?
we are back with another episode of the Man-to-Man Coverage Podcast. Now, usually on the show, we like to talk about up-to-date current topics, which is important to do. The NFL is an ever-changing landscape, but today I want to talk about some players who some are retired, some are in the Hall of Fame, some are still active. I want to, in today's episode, do a quick comparison of Randy Moss and Jerry Rice. We're going to rank the 04 class of quarterbacks, and we're also going to talk about quarterbacks in college, mobile versus pocket passes, and the importance of middle linebackers. A ton to talk about. Let's start. So if you've ever been in school, you know those quick warm-up questions when you get into class, like the math ones, they give you like a 1 centimeter box to do your work and answer in. But today's little quick question has been, who do you think's better, Jerry Rice or Randy Moss? Both Hall of Fame NFL wide receivers. Who's your pick?
Ooh, probably Jerry Rice because Randy, when he thinks he's not getting the ball on a play, tends to not try very hard on the play. So it would kind of give away what your team is doing.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but for me this is very hard because I think if you're going up against Jerry Rice, you needed two guys to cover him. But with Randy, I think Randy Moss is better because I think he just brought more to the table. I think Jerry Rice was just a very different wide receiver at his time. He's someone who, played well, he caught well, but there's a lot of guys who do that now. Hopkins, Fitzgerald, Michael Thomas, Julio. I think Randy Moss was such an explosive wide receiver and brings more to the table, and I think that he's ultimately a better wide receiver and play because of those abilities to go up and get the ball and just have these monstrous plays. And Jerry Rice, his stats are good. He had some nice seasons and plays, but a lot of his stats are great because he played for so long. Like Jerry Rice is like, if you were to say, would you rather have Jerry Rice or Randy Moss for 5 seasons? I'll probably go Jerry Rice because he's very durable and has a great work ethic. But if you say who do you want for a season, Randy Moss. And I think sometimes seasons are more important in the NFL than an actual career. So I think Randy Moss is just the most dominant wide receiver we've ever seen. Him or Megatron, but I'm going Moss.
I can certainly see why you would say that, but I mean, Randy's not even 2 on my list. He'd be 3 behind Fitz. But my thing with Jerry is, look, I haven't watched a lot of old 49ers highlights because I wasn't alive during that time. So it's a little harder for me to talk about Jerry Rice, but I know he was good because the numbers he put up were absolutely ridiculous. Like, Fitz is second in receiving in most categories, and he's not even close to Jerry. And, like, you'd have to play, like, another 2.5 seasons to catch him.
Oh, my goodness.
And that says a lot to me about the kind of numbers Jerry was putting up in the 90s. Now, I think, and I may be completely out of my league saying this, or out of my league. I might just be completely wrong and uneducated here, but I know Jerry was really good at just getting open and making a catch, even if it's just like a sideline catch or something like that. You're right, he didn't do like the crazy Moss stuff where he had a catch named after him. I think Jerry Rice was just Michael Thomas before Michael Thomas, if we're being honest. Like, maybe that's what he did. He's not a sexy receiver, but he gets the job done and puts up a lot of really good numbers. Moss, for me, he would kind of ruin the offense if he was the only receiver because, well, if you're not throwing it to him, he kind of gives it away because he just jogs his route. So it makes it a lot easier for the defense to cue in mid-play on what we're doing.
I guess. I don't know. I think what you said about Jerry Rice is cool, but Moss can get open easily because of his speed and can also make those leaping catches. He does both. So it's not just like he does one or the other. He does both. I think this is very much a modern-day comparison of Julio, Michael Thomas, or something like that. But for me, yeah, Jerry Rice got. I think that for me, Rice had a lot of great quarterbacks. Steve Young, Joe Montana, Tom, Moss did have Brady and Favre, but he also had some fine quarterbacks, and he still did great. He had some ridiculous stat lines that I don't think can be recreated, and I just think he brought a lot more to the table.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I can't really make a great comparison because I've barely seen any Jerry Rice highlights. And maybe I should go and watch some after this. I probably should have done that before this, but we were kind of doing this on short notice.
Watch his Super Bowl catch against the Bengals. That is really great. He actually reminds me a lot of Julian Edelman, actually.
Rice?
Yeah. He just gets open very easily. But a wide receiver we did mention in that list is Larry Fitzgerald. And Larry Fitzgerald was part of the 2004 draft class, a very legendary class, due to the three great quarterbacks taken. In that class, you have Ben Roethlisberger for the Steelers, Eli Manning for the Chargers and Giants, Phillip Rivers for the Giants, Chargers, and Colts. Today we'll be ranking them and discussing what we like about them, what we don't, kind of where we agree, where we disagree. I'll start with mine, explain why they're each at the spot they are. Ben will do the same, and then we'll discuss it. So, I think all three of these players are Hall of Famers. I want to get that out of the way. Number 3 on my list, in last place, is former Giants quarterback Eli Manning, who did retire. Now, Eli does have those 2 Super Bowl wins, and he does make some good plays. I think if Eli Manning has some really incredible career highlights, and I think it's because if you say, hey, Eli, here's this play. We're going to do play action against cover 4. This guy's going to open up. Can you get it there? Eli's going to be like, yeah. And one thing that I think Peyton Manning does very well is he's very intellectual on the field. I think Eli has a lot of that. Eli's a very smart quarterback. And I think he can read defenses well and read coverages and schemes. And I think a lot of his success came off of that. If you look at those 2 Super Bowl wins, he put the ball very well where they could be. Those were excellent ball placements. And he had some really good deep throws as well. Being an Eagles fan, there are a lot of times where, the Eagles play the Giants twice this season. Eli was great at the deep ball, a lot of tight window throws. And he's very good at that. He's very smart. However, why I have Eli in third is that for me, he just struggles when the play breaks down. When the play breaks down, the interceptions come up, and for me, that's where the thing's kind of like, oh, that's kind of why I have him at third. I think sometimes the turnovers happen way too much, and that's something that has always happened. Now, turnovers with quarterbacks are kind of this interesting thing, because like Brett Favre has the most interceptions, but he was able to overcome it with amazing plays, and I don't think Eli Manning could really extend the play that well. So, for the turnovers and him not being able to extend the play, he's at third. However, I do like his IQ of the field and his deep balls. In second place, we have Phillip Rivers. I think Rivers is very similar to Manning. He has a really good deep ball, and I know people criticize it. He does have a pretty interesting throwing motion, but he can get the ball there, and I think Rivers is someone that is very good at throwing the ball off script. That is, I think, his best tendency, and I think that's why he is so great. He reminds me a lot of Matt Stafford in that way. I think Rivers can process a defense well. I think as he's gotten older, we've seen that done very good. And I think he's a better deep, accurate thrower than people give him credit for. Where I kind of have him at 2 is that he just has never been that great in the playoffs. And for me, it's like, you look at someone like Dan Marino, he never won the Super Bowl, but he got to the Super Bowl. Type of scenario. Rivers has never been to a Super Bowl, and the Chargers have been good for some years. It wasn't like he was on the bad team. No, he was on some pretty great teams, or some pretty nice ones. And I think part of being a really elite quarterback is elevating the people around you. Number 1, I have Ben Roethlisberger. I think Big Ben is the combination of the 2 of them. I think he has Phillip Rivers' deep ball accuracy, kind of backyard football style. I think Big Ben is really great at extending the play. Plus, he has the Eli Manning Super Bowl wins and the clutch wins. Being a Ravens fans, yeah, there's times where Big Ben just picked apart a really elite Ravens defense. So that is my ranking. Ben, what is yours? I'm interested to hear this.
Yeah. So, at 3, I have Eli Manning. So obviously he was on some pretty terrible Giants teams, which isn't all his fault. I think when he first started out, like all the way up until about 2012, his teams were pretty good except for his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of towards the end of his career, the Giants just kind of tailed off and they weren't that great anymore.
I think a lot of it was when he started off early in his career, defenses in the NFL were a lot more of an impact. And the Giants had some really amazing defenses. And towards the later half, the defense kind of trailed off. And we got to this more offensive league. And I think there were some mismatches there.
Yeah. But yeah, another thing that Eli also has the most interceptions between the 3 quarterbacks. And he's played a lot less games than they have. Not because, well, actually, I'm not 100% sure about that. Let me check. Okay, sorry, this is kind of unprofessional, but, okay, so he actually has played more games than them by a little bit, but he leads them in interceptions by a lot. Rivers is only like 10 games behind him, and Eli's 44 more interceptions than Phillip Rivers. And Roethlisberger is 9 behind Rivers in terms of interceptions, and he has 2 less games than Rivers under his belt. I think I'm reading that right anyways.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
No, not. He's got 20 less games. Okay, so, yeah, Eli has a lot more picks than them, and he doesn't have even close to as many touchdowns as they do. He's like 33 behind Rivers. Actually, Rivers and Ben are tied in passing touchdowns. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember, 2 years ago they were tied. Yeah.
What am I? Oh, never mind. No, Phillip is way ahead of Eli in passing touchdowns, and so is Ben. Sorry, switching between all these slides is proving to be a little difficult here. Yeah, Eli's also only been to 4 Pro Bowls, which is definitely the least out of his peers. Now, he did win 2 Super Bowls, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't Ben go 1-1 in the Super Bowl?
He's 2-1.
Okay, he's 2-1. And Rivers hasn't even been to the Super Bowl. And so, even though Eli's won 2 Super Bowls, I think a lot more of that was how he incorporated his team into those playoff runs. I don't think it was him just, playing lights out the whole time. And obviously, he was great during those.
So, Ben, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, while discussing these quarterbacks, and you do bring up good points, Eli has a lot more interceptions, and that's just been a part of his game, but you would like to see him improve that. The Pro Bowls are a big thing, but how do you evaluate quarterbacks in Super Bowls? Because, Joe Flacco has won a Super Bowl. He had some great plays in the Super Bowl and playoff runs. Dan Marino has never won a Super Bowl, but Joe Flacco's not better than Dan Marino. How do you evaluate quarterbacks winning Super Bowls? Is it how they played in those games? How much do you weigh them?
I think you should definitely consider how they played in those games, because Eli, come on, he's got the most memorable play in Super Bowl history, that ridiculous catch by David Tyree after Eli looked like he got sacked. And not to mention, they beat the previously undefeated Patriots. That's probably the most impressive Super Bowl win ever.
In his second Super Bowl, he also played well. He had some really nice throws.
Yeah, he played pretty good in that game. So Eli's played great when he's in the Super Bowl. Part of, and that's why I don't like to bring up his career record either, because he's breaking even at 177 wins and losses. So there's, he definitely plays into a few reasons why they were losing those.
With the interceptions.
With the interceptions and a lot of that. He was also really inconsistent during the season. Once he got to the playoffs, if he could get to the playoffs, he was usually pretty good. But during the regular season, I know he had a tendency to be a little bit inconsistent. So that's why I have him third. And just compared, like he's in no means a bad quarterback, but I think his flaws are just a little bit more glaring than Phillip and Big Ben's.
Well, also, he had good talent. It wasn't like he was with bad. He had good talent, and I have not done an in-depth film analysis of Eli Manning's career, but I do think he can attribute some of those losses to the INTs.
Yeah, that's true. And you could definitely attribute some of those wins to his teammates.
Yeah. But he did have some nice throws. What do you think about Eli's?
Yeah, I know that, but
what do you think about Eli's deep accuracy? Do you think it's as good as I say?
Yeah, he's had some really good deep balls. Definitely in like the last 6 years of his career, though, it kind of went away.
I disagree.
He started to struggle to hit those a little bit more, and especially the last 3 years that he was playing, he had like a noodle, which is kind of what we're seeing with Drew Brees right now.
I disagree. I actually saw a video on this by Soft Drink Sports TV. Eli Manning, we had to check it out. He goes more into depth about this, but Eli just didn't have a great alliance, so he didn't have a ton of time to throw, but still his accuracy wasn't the best. I don't think it was short. Yeah, he could throw well. I just don't think it's like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson.
Yeah, well, like his thing was, as he got older, so what I meant by noodle is not that he couldn't throw like a decently accurate ball, because he could. He just couldn't get any power behind it, He couldn't throw any more bullet passes, especially not his last 2 seasons. Like throwing things like out routes where you have to throw the ball hard and fast. He couldn't really do that anymore. Those were getting picked a lot, and that certainly did not help the Giants. But yeah, so that's basically all I have to say about Eli. But I have him third on this list, and it's.
Would you put him in your top 15 quarterbacks of all time?
I would have to sit down and think about that a little bit harder. I'd have to get a list of like every NFL quarterback ever.
I'll put him around the level of Dan Fouts. Like, I wouldn't call Dan Fouts this, oh my gosh, guy you have to watch out for, but he had some really great moments, and I would put Eli around that. Like 14, 15, 13, 12, 11, 10-ish range, where I think he's definitely up there, but I don't think he's an elite.
Off the top of my head, I want to say, like, he's not top 15 to me. Okay. But I haven't sat down and, like, really thought about that hard. But
okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah. All right, so that's all I have to say about Eli Manning. And that was a pretty easy one for me to put him at third, but the next two was a little tougher. And, so obviously Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers are definitely both Hall of Famers. These guys are absolute ballers. It was really hard for me to put one in front of the other, though, because Ben has had a lot more postseason success, clearly. He's played in 9 more playoff games than Phillip Rivers has, which is pretty impressive. Like you said, he's 2-1 in the Super Bowl. Rivers has gotten to the conference championship a few times, but he's run into Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or never quite got there. So I have Phillip Rivers slightly above Ben Roethlisberger, and it just barely. It was really hard for me.
It's going to be fun.
What'd you say?
I said this is going to be fun, everyone. Grab your popcorn.
Yeah. And, I think I've been pretty vocal about I'm a huge Phillip Rivers fan on this podcast before. The dude plays with his heart, and he's a really good leader, too, so that's one thing to take into account, whereas Ben has typically in the past not been the best leader. There have been stories that have come out about that. It sounds like he's changing that, which is great, but, we're looking at the whole career, not just what he's done recently. But yeah, Phillip has been to more Pro Bowls. He's got more passing touchdowns. He's got more passing yards. He only has 9 more interceptions, even though Phillip is like I mean, if you think of both of them off the top of your head, wouldn't you think that Phillip Rivers throws more picks than Roethlisberger?
Yeah, but I want to say by a big margin.
Yeah. So, let's see. So Rivers also, his first 2 seasons, didn't actually do anything because Drew Brees was still there, whereas Big Ben was starting every single year that he was in, and Rivers has passed him in terms of numbers. So, and I know Ben has dealt with a few injuries here and there, which contributes to that a lot, but that says something about Phillip's durability, which also plays into it. Now, of course, you got to take into account Phillip's playoff success, right? That's probably the one thing that people have a hard time putting him over Ben for because, he's never been to a Super Bowl. Ben is 2-1 in the Super Bowl. I think that's really important, but I also think that the Steelers are one of the best run organizations in the NFL, and Ben Roethlisberger has never had a bad team around him, ever, which has played into a lot of his success. Whereas Phil has not really played with that many bad teams, and when they have been bad, it's usually not his fault. So Phil, his first 6 seasons, he was his teams never finished below 500. And then after that, he kind of hovered around the 7-9, 9-7 area for a while. Mm-hmm. Then they went 4-12 in 2015, 5-11 the next year, 9-7 the year after that, 12-4, lost to the Patriots, and then they went 5-11 because Phillip was trying to force a lot of passes. So his teams haven't really been terrible. They just haven't done enough to get to the playoffs every year, and one reason I think that is because Ben usually has a much easier path to the playoffs than Phillip Rivers does during the regular season. Because Ben pretty much... So even though Ben has played the Ravens twice a year for a while, the Ravens had a stretch of about 3 to 4 years where they weren't very good. The Browns are 2 easy bye weeks every time that they play them.
What stretch was that?
After Joe Flacco won the Super Bowl. And in between that Lamar Jackson period, the Ravens were not very good.
2014, they made the playoffs.
Yeah, they made the playoffs. I think they beat the Patriots that year.
No, they lost.
Could be wrong, but
2015 they were bad. 2015 the Ravens were bad. 2016 they almost made it. So, I mean, Big Ben and the Ravens. I mean, that's a good defense. So I wouldn't call those easy games. And the Bengals and Steelers have had some wild games,
They have had some really wild games, but the Bengals are also a really terribly run organization, and they haven't been good his whole career either. Remember, we're talking whole career, not just the past 5 years. Not the past 5 years. There was that stretch where the Bengals were consistently in the playoffs for 5 years straight, and they lost every single one of their first games, and they had some really great games with the Steelers. Those were some of the best, most old-fashioned games to watch.
Especially
but
that
if you want to take a look at
one.
And, the Ravens were okay for some of those years, and they were great for other years. Like Ben really had to try and fight to beat them in the division. The Browns obviously need no explanation onto why they are not a competition to anybody in that division. So then if you want to look at Phillip Rivers' division, right, he had to play the Colts twice a year while they had Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck for most of his career.
Wait, what? No?
No, not the Colts, sorry. I don't know what I'm talking about. For some reason,
the Raiders?
Yeah. Okay.
The Raiders?
He had to play the Broncos twice a year. That's why I was thinking Peyton Manning. And then I thought, for some reason, Colts. Okay. So he had to play Peyton Manning twice a year for a good stretch of 4 to 5 years where Peyton Manning was playing his best football of his career, except for his last season. But,
that defense.
Right. And then he had to play the Chiefs twice a year. The Chiefs weren't that great when Phillip got there, but after that they started to play much, much better. When Alex Smith got there, they were a lot more of a competition. And obviously, with Patrick Mahomes the last few years, that team was really hard for him to go in there and beat them. They did have some really good games, like the Steelers and Bengals, though. They came down to the wire almost every time.
Chargers Chiefs are a fun rivalry. Very underrated.
Yeah. And then there's the Raiders, of course. Derek Carr is a pretty decent quarterback, and that 1 year he was in MVP considerations. But yeah, I think historically, when those two guys entered the league, I think the Ravens were better than any team that Rivers had to go against twice a year most of the time.
Yeah.
But the Bengals and Browns compared to the other three teams in the AFC West were just not as good. So I think Ben had it a little bit easier every year, and that he only had to worry about one team, whereas Phil had to worry about at least one or two other teams in his division every year. Plus, Phillip has been to, I think, one or two more Pro Bowls. Now, one thing I noticed while I was looking at these guys, and I thought it's kind of funny, is none of these guys have been first team All Pros.
I'm shocked because
That
Big Ben
kind of
has
caught
had some
my eye.
really nice seasons. I get Eli,
Yeah.
but like Big Ben and okay, that's surprising. All right, Ben.
Yeah,
I have a lot to say. Okay.
go ahead.
First of all, I don't like the whole idea of comparing team wins because if we're doing that, then Tom Brady is in an easy division. I just don't like that because, yeah, you play your division, but you also play the other teams in the conferences and stuff. I just think Big Ben's better because he's won the big games and they're close in stats. It's not like they're far away. I think Phil Rivers is a Hall
but
of Famer.
Ben also started 2 more seasons than Phil.
You gotta remember, though, Big Ben had a lot of running backs. Le'Veon Bell and guys. So, part of a good amount of those touchdowns are to the running backs. And also,
Okay.
the main thing is that what I think Big Ben does is that, like, when you're an elite quarterback, you have to take that talent and just elevate them. And, Phil Rivers had, like I said, he had great deep balls. He's had some really great seasons. He's a Hall of Famer. I don't know about first ballot, but there's a time where if you pass all these yards and stuff, you have to get those wins. I make an exception for Matt Stafford because that's the Lions, but the Chargers have had some nice teams, and it's like there was a time where I think Phil Rivers just never really got that elevation for the teams. He always had something now, like, oh, he threw that pick there. Big Ben, beat Peyton Manning in the Colts several times in the playoffs, like one time in the playoffs, or he went up against a tough Jets defense. He went up against the Ravens one time. He's gone up against some tough competition and won because of his strength and stuff. I just think when you compare Big Ben and Phil Rivers, they're two excellent quarterbacks, but Philip Rivers just never got those big wins for me. And I think that's the biggest knock on him. If he went to a Super Bowl and won it, I'll most likely give the edge to Rivers, but he never did. That's the big thing with me. It's just like, when you're a quarterback to that caliber, you need to kind of extend that team to the postseason. And that's the one thing. He had some good talent there. He had Keenan Allen recently. He had Antonio Gates. He had Michael Floyd, who was actually good early in his career. He kind of trailed off. I mean, he had some nice players there. So I think that
Michael Floyd?
Yeah, he was good with the Cardinals and Chargers. Then things went off, but he was...
Well, he didn't play for the Chargers.
Yeah, he did.
No, he did not. He went to the Patriots after the Cardinals let him go.
No, before the Cardinals, he was a Charger.
No, he got drafted by the Cardinals.
He did?
Yeah.
Really? Oh.
You're thinking of somebody else.
Oh, maybe a different Floyd. But anyways, point stands is Rivers has had some good players, so I don't know. I just think that Big Ben has gotten those wins more consistently. In some tough games.
Yeah, but see, here's my thing with that, right, is like, it's the same reason I try not to hold Eli against all of those losses like that, because he literally is breaking even at his career, even though he's got those 2 Super Bowl wins, because it is not basketball where having a good quarterback means you win. I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers. I mean, are you going to say that he's not better than like 90% of the quarterbacks that have played in the NFL because he's been to 1 Super Bowl? or 2 Super Bowls and won one of them and lost another one.
Aaron Rodgers is 1-0 in Super Bowls. And he's had a lot of winning seasons and playoff victories.
But he's never really been able to get the job done either when it comes down to it. That's why he's only been to 2 Super Bowls.
He's been to 1.
Now, I thought he lost one.
No,
that's right. They beat the Steelers. Okay. But, yeah, so here's my thing. Phillip, when he does get his team to the playoffs, has played well in most of them, and he's run into some really tough opponents. Like, his first year making the playoffs in 2007, guess who they played in the first game?
Who?
The undefeated New England Patriots.
Okay, well...
Do I blame him for losing that game? No. He didn't play great in that game either.
In your case, then you should be saying, if Phillip Rivers is the best quarterback out of all those figures, Big Ben has won some tough games.
So is Phillip Rivers.
But he just brought up an example that he's ran into some tough teams and he didn't win.
He has run into some tough teams, but he ran into one of the best teams, ever. And he's played against the best quarterback ever in a lot of his playoff games, which is why he loses. And Ben Roethlisberger has not exactly been great at beating Tom Brady either.
True.
A lot of his playoff exits are also to the Patriots. It's just the way that the seeding works. They usually play each other later in conference championships or something.
That's true.
Yeah. So then the next time Rivers made the playoffs, 2008, he took on the Tennessee Titans, beat them. I don't know who their quarterback was. Then he beat the Peyton Manning-led Colts. And then after that, he lost to the Patriots again. So that's really unfortunate.
Here's my thing.
Go ahead.
Here's my thing. It's just that we've talked about this before off air, but you mentioned here that you said that Big Ben has played more seasons, he's had better talent, but better talent doesn't automatically make you a great quarterback. Like Brock Osweiler, by the way, nice dude. He had DeAndre Hopkins for a couple of seasons.
Okay, but we're not talking about Brock Osweiler. We're talking about Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
But I'm just saying, having great talent doesn't diminish you. It doesn't automatically make you great.
It does in a way, though. I mean, Case Keenum took the Vikings. Case Keenum and Nick Foles are 2 really good examples of that. You can get carried by the talent around you.
But they also made some great plays. I want to say they got carried.
Yeah, they did. But where are they now?
Backups?
Neither of them are starting.
Well, they play great in those stretches.
Right, but if you're gonna say, Brock can't do well with whatever team he has.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, but especially because Roethlisberger has. Okay, so not to say Rivers hasn't had good running backs because he had LaDainian Tomlinson.
Okay, well, hold on. You said what? Big Ben played 2 more seasons, but Big Ben was out last year, so it's 1 more season.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that. So in 1 more season, Phillip has 30 more touchdown passes, which I think is very important, and only 9 more interceptions.
He has 30 more?
To me, that's huge. Yeah. Phillip is sitting just shy of 400 touchdown passes.
I will say this as we wrap this up, because I really like this debate. I think Phillip Rivers is a very underrated player. I think a lot of people just think of him as a turnover machine, which he does turn the ball over, but he also makes excellent throws. I just think it's the lack of the postseason thing that's going to keep him from the elite guys, but I still think he's someone in the media who people should respect a lot more. Because like you said, I'm arguing you to prove my points, but there's a lot I like about Rivers. He's a hardworking dude. He puts his heart and soul into the game. He's a guy that loves the game for me, and that's something that's really great about him. He's kind of like Ryan Fitzpatrick at a more elite level, and he is kind of the my comparison, in all honesty. So, they can win some games here and there. They're not going to win a Super Bowl. They have a lot of fun plays. But I think Big Ben is also a bit more accurate. I don't know. He's fun to watch as well, but for me, if I had to, it is close between all 3 of them, but for me, I just think Big Ben is a bit more better than Phillip Rivers due to those big wins where he has some nice plays. So I do like Phillip Rivers, though. He's a really fun guy to watch. He gets so much disrespect by the media, dude. That is insane.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
I remember, like, it's just like when he came to the Colts, everyone's like, he's gonna suck or, whatever. It's just like, can you not? Like, I don't know. And what also annoys me is, like, I feel like all three of these quarterbacks are disrespected. Eli Manning, he's like, the Eli face. Have you ever seen those memes?
Yeah, I've seen that one.
They're pretty funny, but still. Rivers, like I said, gets disrespected. And then, like, Big Ben came out about his pornography addiction, and everyone just roast him. And it's just like, I just don't like that stuff. Like, you gotta respect when people, come out and to their weaknesses.
Yeah, it is pretty annoying, that does suck. Yeah.
Do you have any more final thoughts on these two?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll agree to disagree. Yeah. Even though Ben has been in more playoff games, I think earlier in his career, especially when he had his rings, I just think his teams were, like, those were some of the best teams ever. And he also had one of the best defenses ever, too, on his team.
Yeah, his defenses were nice.
Yeah, which is something Phil never really had, which is why he was hovering around that 7-9, 9-8 for a while. Now, like, when he was older, he got nice defenses, but then, he started to throw a couple bad picks at the end of games. Mm-hmm. And I will admit, recently, he hasn't been that clutch. He's been trying to play too much hero ball. But over the course of his career, I think he has been close to Ben in a lot of like clutch factor stuff. It's just his teams haven't been as good.
Yeah. Our discussion, two quarterbacks, and that's college quarterbacks, because we're really seeing this trend of the NFL mobile guys. Lamar, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyle Murray, on and on. Aaron Rodgers even is mobile. How important do you think that is? Because for me, like when Sam Darnold was coming out for the NFL draft and Josh Allen, people like Darnold's better. He's a pocket passer. Now, given the Jets have been pretty crappy in terms of the wide receiver and stuff, Allen has had some great tools. What I'm trying to get at is that where is the NFL going? Because a lot of guys like Trevor Lawrence are hyped up. I like Trevor Lawrence to an extent, but he can't scramble. So are we getting to more of this thing where scrambling is a necessity? Because, we've seen plays like Darnold. He's had some nice moments, but if the play isn't open, he can make some nice throws, but like, there's a chance of it getting picked. Like, for me, if you're an NFL GM, do you go with Trevor Lawrence, a pocket guy, do you go with a guy like Trey Lance or Brock Purdy, who we both love Brock Purdy, but do you go a guy who's more mobile and can create more plays? Like, where do you stand on that spectrum? Because Joe Burrow was a mobile quarterback, and he was drafted ahead of Tua, who is more of a pocket guy. Kyle Murray ahead of Haskins. Kyle Murray's more agile than Haskins. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to compare Kyler to Haskins, though, because Kyler's a better thrower of the football than Haskins anyway.
But Haskins was like crazy in Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as long as you... So here's what I have to say about that. So the best quarterback to ever play the game was probably the worst at running the football of any quarterback that's ever played. But the reason he was so good at getting away from pressure was because he had excellent footwork in the pocket. And he had kind of an awareness of where all the defensive linemen were around him. So he knew where to step and stuff like that. I think as long as you have good footwork in the pocket and you know when to step up or move to the side, move here, stand in the pocket and take a hit and just let one rip down the field, I think you can be successful. You don't have to be able to run the football like Lamar Jackson every play, or Kyler Murray, or Michael Vick, or even Kirk Cousins, or Josh Allen. You can just stand in there, step to the left, throw a good ball that's accurate. I think that's all you really need to be successful.
Okay.
It's obviously a little harder to execute that, but I think the more athletic quarterbacks have an easier time doing that than some of the pocket passers. But pocket passers, if they have really good footwork in the pocket, it's not going to matter if they can run or not.
Okay. Well, by the way, I want to preface that I'm not agreeing. I'm just proposing this. Because of
Oh,
trends.
no, I know.
I'm talking about in the future of the NFL. Because a lot of the top guys are mobile. Tom Brady was amazing in avoiding the pressure. I'm just saying, if you're an NFL GM, which way are you going? So you're saying it's about footwork. So if Trevor Lawrence, he has pretty nice footwork, you're good with him.
Yeah. If I think he can stand in the offensive line and do whatever needs to be done back there, then yeah, I would pick him up. If I think he can hold his own with footwork. Now, if I'm a really terrible team like the Cincinnati Bengals and my offensive line sucks, maybe I go mobile quarterback because they really do need to be able to move in the pocket like pretty fast.
Well, the NFL is also going in a trend where guys like running backs are getting paid more, corners are getting paid more, so that means O-line's going to have less money, so O-lines are probably going to dip down. So I think it's just interesting to see, because we're in a very dominant era of a lot of rushing quarterbacks. I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, and I do think teams that sign running backs to a big contract are kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because that's never really worked for a team. And it is kind of stupid. You can literally get one or two guys who do what your running back did for about a 20th of the price and go spend it at other spots. Running back is a super, and as a guy who really loves the running back spot, I hate to say that, but just because you have a game changer at running back doesn't mean diddly squat. It doesn't mean you're going to make the playoffs at all. Dallas Cowboys have Ezekiel Elliott. They didn't make the playoffs last year, and he hasn't helped them win any playoff games. Saquon Barkley, his situation is pretty self-explanatory. Joe Mixon, his situation is pretty self-explanatory. Alvin Kamara, he's made the playoffs. He hasn't really changed the way his team is played, though. They had Mark Ingram before he was there.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this in a previous episode before. Well, my big thing is like, like, for me, now...
Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, those two are good examples as well, I think. Le'Veon Bell. David Johnson.
Yeah, it's just, he did well in the postseason. It's just interesting to see how things are going with the quarterback position. Do you think Ben will be to a point where, like, all the top guys are mobile? Because I feel like there's still some pocket passes, but once, like, Brady and Breeze retire, could you see a lot of the top guys being mobile?
No.
Okay. So you still think the trend's going to stay?
Like, I think the pocket passers will be more athletic.
Okay.
But just because, like, when Brady and Breeze were in college, nutrition and all that wasn't as surefire. Now, Tom Brady has probably taken better care of his body than any other athlete ever. But I see what you're saying, but
like, it wouldn't surprise
the
me.
Lamar Jackson thing and Kyler Murray and Cam Newton. It doesn't always work. That's the thing, because those guys, sometimes they run into offensive linemen, they sack themselves, they tend to fumble the ball a lot more than the other guys do. Now, while their running game is nice, it usually can also get them hurt really bad. Just ask Cam. He took some absolutely egregious hits a few seasons ago. I mean, the refs were not calling anything. I felt so bad for him. But yeah, I think their durability is not going to be nearly the same either. Plus, the mobile quarterbacks haven't done well in the playoffs either.
Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl. Watson's won some
but Russell Wilson's not really he is not a mobile quarterback the same way that like Lamar and Kyler are, I barely ever see him take off for like a 20 or 10-yard run. He runs if he really needs to, but he's a footwork guy. Like, he stands in there, he moves in the pocket really well, and he can do rollouts and stuff like that. But he's more of a footwork guy to me. He's fast and he's super athletic, but he doesn't run the ball a whole lot by himself.
So what I'm getting from this, and by the way, I just kind of threw this out to you, was I had some thoughts, is like, you're saying there's a difference between guys like Russell Wilson and Lamar. I can't put them in the same group, but there are differences. My thing is like Trey Lance out of North Dakota State and Brock Purdy out of Iowa State. If this was 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, those guys are probably day 2. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go round 1, just because I think the NFL is getting to a point where these guys are kind of combining positions on the defense. Guys like Derwin James, Jamal Adams are just not in the backfield safeties. They're coming up, they're blitzing, they're going after quarterbacks, and you need guys to avoid pressure and stuff. And I think that's something we're going to see a lot more of in the NFL is can you avoid pressure? And I think a lot of that has to do with scrambling.
Yeah, see, I think scrambling works with that, but good footwork works just the same. Tom Brady is excellent at getting rid of the ball before somebody hits him with a blitz.
I think more of that has to do with his IQ in the game, but his footwork is nice.
Yeah. It also does help if the play calling is great, too, like the counter blitzes and stuff like that. I think there's a lot that goes into it. But I don't think we're going to see, 32 mobile quarterbacks all starting that all run the ball a lot. And I just don't think we're ever going to get to that point, especially because those guys typically don't have the best arms compared to the pocket passers.
There are some examples like Mariota and stuff not working against that. It's just an interesting topic. I think it'll be a good mix. And then, Ben, one last... Where are the impact of middle linebackers in the NFL? On the defense? There's not guys
So typically... Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, you're kind of cutting out me.
My point is, like, Roquan Smith drafted a couple of years ago. He's been kind of quiet. Guys like Devin White were great. The wings, and he had some nice plays. Like, when I look at the Seahawks wings, Bobby Wagner doesn't jump off the page. He's a Hall of Fame player, but my thing is, where do you draft middle linebackers? Because a lot of the teams, like the Chiefs last year, the linebackers, not the best. The Niners did have Fred Warner, though. So I think for me, middle linebacker is an important position, but I think you could maybe go like day 2 with it and get a nice, solid guy, like a Raekwon McMillan or Jordan Hicks, and be fine. That's kind of where I'm at. You could get an elite player, but I would probably put my cap space somewhere else.
I think... So, the elite middle linebackers like Luke Kuechly and Bobby Wagner are the first two that come to my mind because they're almost always competing for it every year.
I'm sad. Man, that Luke Kuechly retirement was... I hope he coaches.
I wasn't too surprised by his retirement because of all the concussions he's dealt with. Like, I remember that one where he was literally crying as he was being carted off the field.
That was tough.
It's really hard to watch that stuff. I don't blame him for retiring early, and I think it was actually probably a smart decision with how many injuries he's had.
I hope he goes into coaching.
Yeah. No, I hope he gets a coaching job somewhere, maybe, if that's what he wants to do. So anyways, going back to the middle linebacker thing, if you have a really elite guy like one of those two who can run stuff and cover
Patrick
well,
Willis,
I think you go all in on them because
sorry to cut you off, but like the early 2010s, we saw a lot of those guys like Willis, Kuechly, and Wagner.
Yeah, and Urlacher and Ray Lewis are some other guys that I think of. But
2000 to like 2012, 13, 14, 15, I feel like is kind of that period.
Yeah. So Kuechly and Wagner are both excellent at covering people. Like, I remember a play where Kuechly was down the field keeping up with Julio Jones, and I was like, okay, now Julio caught the ball and scored on that play, but Kuechly wasn't even supposed to be covering that guy in the first place. I thought that was super impressive that he could even keep up with him in the first place. And then Bobby Wagner is obviously a hit stick up the middle. That guy's he's making sure nobody gets through that Seahawks front four. So I think middle linebacker is a super important position, but I think you can get away with having somebody who's a little older and a better run stuffer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they need to be able to cover a little bit because like what we saw with the Cardinals last year is Jordan Hicks is great against the run, and the Cardinals were the worst in the league at covering tight ends because Jordan Hicks looked like he was lost in the woods out there trying to cover tight ends. But it obviously is a huge impact, though. Like, if you don't have a good middle linebacker who can cover tight ends, and they're really old school, like, I'll go hit defensive linemen and make sure the running back's not going anywhere, but covering a tight end, I can't do that.
So
I think that might get phased out a bit more because of how much teams throw the ball. Like, you need to have somebody who can cover that guy.
So you're agreeing with me that the position is getting a bit less valuable in some ways, but getting more valuable in others. Like, going back to the whole mobile quarterback thing, I think speed is really important. Back in the day, yes, those linebackers were incredibly fast, as you're saying with Kuechly, but they're more of the field general types. I still think that's very important, but I think it's more about keeping them off the run. And not just running backs, but running backs in the slot position lining up in the offense, or quarterbacks even running now, is really a big thing to see kind of how they do it. I think middle linebackers in this interesting position because, like, outside linebackers are dominating the league with guys like Khalil Mack, Von Miller, people like Chandler Jones as well. And then you have like safeties dropping in the box like Adams and James. So I don't know if the middle linebacker, like the guy in the middle, it's not so much about where they line up. I think it's just more of what they can do. If you ever
They just need to be consistent. That's what they need to be. They don't need to be big playmakers. They just need to be consistent in what they do.
Which is different because back in the day, I think it was the opposite. But now it's different. So I think as long as, like, hey, you're not going to give up a huge run and you're going to make good plays. You're going to be a good player and paid well.
Yeah. I can't think of... I'm trying to think of teams with good middle linebackers
Eric
off the
Kendricks
top of my head.
is amazing for the Vikings.
Yeah, he's really good. I feel like most teams have a pretty good middle linebacker, for being completely honest.
Let's see, Detroit.
They don't really have one.
Tavai had a nice rookie year. Green Bay, they're solid. Minnesota, yes. Chicago. I don't know how Roquan Smith is doing. I assume he's good.
I think he's been all right, but not like a superstar, you know. But I think he's been doing his job at least.
Had a really nice. Sorry to cut you off. Patrick Queen had a really nice week 1 for Baltimore.
Is he a middle linebacker? I thought he was an outside linebacker.
He's middle.
Okay.
Devin Bush had
C.J. Mosley is another guy.
Yeah, he's with the Jets. Devin Bush had a good rookie year for Pittsburgh. Cleveland and Cincinnati are decent. Jets, Bills, good. Dolphins, they're fine. Patriots, they're good. Jaguars, elite. Miles Jack.
Patriots, not so much anymore.
I forgot the guy's left. I love Darius Leonard.
The Colts dude, he's good. Miles Jack on the Jaguars, he's really good.
The
Texans have Bernardrick McKinney. He's still younger. He's a pretty good middle linebacker.
I feel like because we could go through all the teams, but I don't want to keep it short for time. McKinney, I think, is honestly what the middle linebacker is going to be in the future. Guys like a Darius Leonard, who the picks are there, but it's more about the run stuffing, and they just do that very well. And they're nice in coverage. I think that's who the middle linebackers are going to be of the future. And I think McKinney almost set the market, you know.
Yeah, they don't always need to be the best at covering tight ends. They just need to be able to do it against some of the lesser tight ends, because obviously it's super hard to guard tight ends in the first place.
Like George Kittle and Kelsey and stuff.
Kittle, Kelsey, Ertz, like those guys, even Waller, like
Andrews,
you can't expect them to hold them to like almost nothing, you know? Like that's almost impossible. But like guys like, say, Jack Doyle of the Colts, or like a team that doesn't really have a tight end, like the Cardinals, or Mike Gesicki of the Dolphins, O.J. Howard, teams like that, they should be able to cover those tight ends.
I'd love to do an episode on tight ends, because like there's some guys that are just so interesting, because like O.J. Howard never really broke out. Mike Gesicki is a physical dude, but he just never broke out. I think linebackers are definitely changing. I think you just kind of have to do your job. Like the Bill Belichick system, do your job. Like, who do they have? Oh, who's the linebacker? Jamie Collins was a very nice run dude, and I felt like he had some
he's
good...
on the Lions now, though.
He had some good coverage plays, and I feel like that's kind of the linebackers we're seeing now. There's such an interesting position, because, like, Bobby Wagner, I don't remember, like, any of his plays last season, because he does everything so well. Like, he's a special player, and I think that, one quick question here, Ben, as we wrap up. Do you think if you have, like, for instance, let's say a hypothetical situation, if you have a middle linebacker who's really fast, would you consider them putting them on the edge, have 3 guys rushing, and then have like a safety in the box at a linebacker, kind of like a hybrid thing?
It depends if they're actually good at beating offensive linemen or not.
If
Because
they
you could
are.
be fast at the linebacker spot and then not be able to get any pressure.
True. But yeah, I think like linebackers and safety is almost colliding because like Derwin James, who's out again this year. Oh, dude, that was such a tough thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if the Chargers move on from him after this year.
Really?
Yeah, he's been in the league 3 years, right? And he's played less than a season and a half.
Oh my god. He was so good though. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah. See, I don't even know because I don't watch Chargers games that much.
He was
and he's
elite his rookie year. He was elite. He was. I had a really nice pick against Big Ben. I think, yeah. Rivers versus Roethlisberger, yeah.
I do remember that Chargers-Steelers game because Roethlisberger ended up losing, and then he played the Broncos later that year and threw a pick to a defensive tackle. I remember that very clearly.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
Steelers fans in the chat.
Yeah, well, I also think middle linebackers are the speed is a big thing. Guys like Devin White was super fun to watch in Tampa Bay. The speed of guys is just so fun to watch. But speaking of...
It is hard to age at that position and be able to stay there.
Well, that's why I think you start off the physical stuff, but then you learn the IQ. I think that's why Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly are great. They're great physically, athletically, but then they learned of the game and were the quarterbacks of the defense and have those IQs grow. So I think that's why I loved the Devin White pick to Tampa Bay last year. And he's going to learn behind Levante David, and he's already playing well from what I've heard week 1 against New England. So I think he's going to be a future Hall of Famer or up there. I know it's a bold statement, but I think he has the physical traits and the mental capacity to be one of the greats.
Yeah, we'll see. I usually wait to decide on people after they've been in the league for 3 years.
What do you think of LVE, Leighton Vander Esch?
So he plays outside linebacker, if I remember correctly.
Oh, he does? Okay. Well, what do you think of him regardless?
Jalen Smith is the middle linebacker.
He's good. I like
Leighton
Jalen
Vander
Smith.
Esch he's a really good linebacker. That guy's an absolute tackling machine. I rarely see him miss tackles.
Mm-hmm. I remember he played.
And he's good at covering too.
Yeah, I remember he played a game against the Eagles and just picked off Winston in a really great play and stuff. I remember when he was selected, everyone thought that was the worst move ever because people wanted Dallas to get a wide receiver, and then they traded for Murray Cooper, and then they were pretty good that season. I think they won a playoff game and almost went to the NFC Championship. A lot of people diss the Cowboys, but there was that 1 year where they almost beat the Rams, and if they won, they would have gone to the Saints, who they beat earlier that season. So if they won that game, it would have been a Cowboys-Patriots Super Bowl, which, boy, would have been interesting. That would
have been interesting for sure. Yeah, the Cowboys, man, dude, they are such underperformers, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's the coaching staff. Jason Garrett's a cool guy and stuff, but
I don't think it's the coaching staff that much. I think maybe we just overhype the Cowboys every year. They sign a lot of veterans, and then maybe the veterans just happen to regress the second they move to Texas.
I don't know what it is, man. It's definitely interesting, but anyways, guys, I'll do it as we officially hit 1 hour on the recording. Hope you guys enjoy this. Yeah, I don't know whenever this will be up. Probably after week 2 of the NFL season. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments below and what topics you want us to do. I like these multi-topic episodes where we can just talk about a lot of different things and some more of the off-brand stuff, but still things that I think are interesting and important to the NFL, because you could honestly talk about the NFL for hours on end because there's just so many things to talk about and stuff. But Ben, do you have any final remarks before we end off this episode?
Not really. I think a tight end episode would actually be pretty cool if we want to talk about the position and where we think it's going in the next few years.
Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe that and safeties, because I really like safeties.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, we'll see you then. Take care and have a good one.